Hey everybody, welcome back. We have finished up our look at APUSH period 1. We're going to jump now into APUSH period 2. And in period 2, we're looking at the years 1607 to 1754. That will be between the settlement of Jamestown in 1607 with the outbreak of the 7 Years' War, also known as the French and Indian War, in 1754. So far in our curriculum, we focused heavily on the Spanish. We've also mentioned the Portuguese a little bit. We're going to branch out a little bit from that as we kind of get into other Europeans getting into the business of colonizing, particularly in North America. So let's look at our guiding question. It says, what were the characteristics of different European efforts at colonization? And you can look at our map over here. We've got the Spanish, we've talked about pretty extensively, the French, the English, the Dutch. We're going to touch on all those different categories here as we run through here. As a quick reminder, with Spanish, we're talking about settlement in the Caribbean. We're talking about settlement in modern-day Mexico, modern-day American Southwest, extensively across South America. The Aztec, the Inca Empire, both defeated by Spanish conquistadors. The goal for the Spanish was one of gaining wealth. Whether that's gold or silver or cash crop farming, they saw these colonies as sources of wealth, as basically a big piggy bank they can withdraw money from. In the course of their setting up their colonies, the Spanish are also going to focus heavily on the subjugation of Native Americans. We looked at the encomienda system in a previous video. We looked at Spanish intermarriage. We looked at intermarriage with Native Americans, that is. We looked at the Spanish hierarchy, the caste system with the Peninsulares on top and slaves on the bottom and all that kind of stuff. Spreading Christianity was also a major focus for the Spanish conquistadors and settlers. It wasn't just about taking land, it was also about taking souls for the Catholic Church. And as I just mentioned, the caste system was pretty strict, pretty extensive in the Spanish New World. It really depended on who you were. Who you were really depended on who your parents were and where you were born. And those factors really kind of established a pathway in life as to what privileges you would have or what opportunities you would have or would not have. Now, for the French and Dutch, we're going to combine those two because their stories are pretty similar in the sense that, unlike the Spanish, who are going to send over a fair number of settlers, the French and Dutch really did not. Permanent settlers for the French French and Dutch could be measured in just probably tens of thousands, and instead of putting a huge European presence in North America, what the French and Dutch are going to do as far as traders go, they're going to rely heavily on building alliances with the Native Americans, also using intermarriage as a tool of getting closer with other Native American groups and establishing trade routes and trade partnership. For the French and Dutch, they were very much interested in gaining fur and other products from the Native Americans. They would, obviously have manufactured goods in Europe that the French and Dutch could bring to North America. They'd exchange those goods for the furs, which were in high demand back in Europe. Beaver, in particular, was a big commodity. Now, as I said, we're going to combine the French and Dutch, but we need to talk about how they were settled separately for a moment. And when we're thinking about the French presence in North America, we think of their colony of New France, which would be basically modern-day Canada, or at least part of modern-day Canada. And the first French settlement was at a place called Quebec on the St. Lawrence River. The St. Lawrence River flows basically from this direction outward to the Gulf of St. Lawrence. It's kind of like the Mississippi of Canada in the sense that it's this major artery of trade and movement of people. The founder of Quebec was Samuel de Champlain. You can see him over here on the left. And again, that's New France. Now, with the Dutch, they called their colony New Netherland. And in 1623, the Dutch West Indies Company, which is one of these joint stock companies, kind of like a corporation, a trade company, established a presence at the southern terminus of the Hudson River. Now, the Hudson River flows from northern New York down to the Atlantic Ocean. This is, of course, a very, very important trade route. And that's where the Dutch will set up, as you can see, outposts here and there. The most important outpost was New Amsterdam, which we would know better as New York City. And there's just a little map of what New Amsterdam would have looked like. This is the southern tip of Manhattan. So if you've ever been to Manhattan, the southern tip, this is what it looked like. This up here is obviously a defensive wall, and that is literally where the term Wall Street comes from in New York City. There was a street built along where that old Dutch wall once sat. All right, now we're going to look at the English, and since, of course, we as Americans are basically kind of the children of England in many ways, our focus on the English is only going to grow in the coming days, weeks, and months. Now, compared to the French and the Dutch and even the Spanish, you're going to see a very large movement of English from the Old World to the New World, and not just young men who are looking to hit it rich and then maybe go back to Europe. You're going to see really concentrated efforts at permanent settlement with families. You're going to have men, women, children, the whole 9 yards crossing the Atlantic. And one of the reasons they were coming over was this desire for some sort of social mobility, some sort of economic prosperity, opportunities that just were closed for them back in England for a variety of reasons. Another reason we're going to see a lot of English come over and settle on the eastern seaboard is religious freedom. Now, that could mean that you were a Puritan and you didn't like the Church of England. You thought it was had too many Catholic elements or something. You don't like it. So you want to purify the church. You want to go to the New World where you can practice your faith unimpeded, basically. And then you've got the Quakers, another Protestant sect that was a minority in England, and many of the Quakers felt that the New World posed an opportunity to expand and practice their faith in an uninterrupted manner. And then you also have English Catholics. England had been a Catholic country all the way up until the days of Henry VIII, where he broke with the church, and then England became a Protestant country. So English Catholics saw the New World as a chance to continue being Catholics in a way that would be, again, uninterrupted, uninterfered with. Again, unlike, say, the French and the Dutch, which were basically there largely to just trade with the Native Americans, or like the Spanish, who saw the New World as a giant gold mine, for the English, it's not really, I mean, there are going to be elements of all those things, but they're really there to settle long term. So you're have farming settlements established going forward. Unlike the French and Dutch, who extensively intermarried with Native Americans, and the Spanish did as well, the English tended to live separately from Native Americans. They tended to, basically isolate themselves. Not a lot of intermarriage between the English and the Native Americans, at least any big trends. All right, so that was our quick look at the different European groups, the Spanish, the French, the Dutch, and the English, and how their characteristics differed. There's your guiding questions. So there you go. In our next video, we'll move on and talk more about the English and European colonies in North America.